My name is Emily Carter. I taught first grade. I baked bread on Sundays. I said thank you to strangers and I forgave small mistakes because I believed people could change. I believed in kindness like it was a rule you lived by. One morning, I heard my husband on the phone. He thought I was making coffee in the next room. I was not. I stood at the doorway of our bedroom and listened without meaning to. His voice was low and confident. I knew that voice. I knew him. She'll never find out. She's too naive, he said. Those words hit me like a bell. The kitchen lights seemed too bright. The spoon in my hand was suddenly heavy. I did not yell. I did not storm into the room. I walked into our bedroom like I was sleepwalking. I opened the closet quietly and reached for the small wooden box I kept for old letters and ticket stubs. The box fit in the palm of my hand. It was not big enough to hold all the things I would like to say. It was enough for the small proof I needed. I wrapped the box in the blue tissue we used for delicate china. I left it on his pillow. I turned the corner and walked out of the house without another sound. When he found it, he opened it. He sank to the floor. He looked at the things inside like he was seeing a mirror for the first time. He pressed his hand to his mouth and his knees bent. I stood on the sidewalk 2 houses down and watched through the window as his shoulders shook. He finally understood. Or maybe he just felt fear. The difference would matter later. I stood in the cool air and let the sound of a passing bus fill the space where the rest of the answer should be. I did not go back inside. I did not drive away either. I sat on the front steps and remembered when we were young and when the world had been kinder to us both. I will tell you how we reached that moment. You should know him the way I knew him before the phone call and the box. You should know me too, because when you see both sides, the story makes sense. We met at a summer picnic, years ago. He spilled lemonade on my dress and laughed like he had never hurt anyone. He was Mark then, bright eyes, easy smile, hair that always looked like he had run his hands through it. I thought he was handsome. I thought he was kind. We married in a small church with paper flowers. We promised the same things most people promise when they stand close and believe in forever. Life with Mark was gentle at first. He helped with the trash. He loved my father's old rock collection and would sit for hours polishing imperfect stones. He told me he loved my laugh. He called me in the middle of the day to tell me a silly joke. He was the one who signed my name on the hospital forms when our son was born. We named him Noah. Noah had my eyes and Mark's stubborn chin. We had trouble like everyone else. Money was tight some months. Mark worked late shifts and sometimes came home smelling of diesel. He apologized when he forgot to buy milk. I forgave him. I forgave small things because I believed that love was forgiving. The small things kept growing. At first, it was a lipstick on a collar and a late text he hid when my back was turned. Then it was more time at work and more excuses for missed dinners. I found receipts from cafes he had never told me about. I found a tiny hairband lodged under the couch cushion that did not belong to me. I learned to look for evidence quietly. Evidence does not speak, but it shows you the truth in quiet ways. A grocery bag with a bakery sticker from a part of town he never went to. An old key he forgot to hide. A photograph on his phone I did not recognize. I sat on our porch one evening and watched Noah on the swing, small feet beating the air. He giggled and did not know his father had stopped laughing back at him the way he used to. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to be the kind person my parents had taught me to be. I wanted to keep our little family safe. But kindness cannot be a blindfold. I tried to talk. I tried to ask him questions about where he was and who he was with. He smiled, told me I was being jealous, said I was making mountains out of molehills. He said I worried too much. He told me that trust was an easy thing we had once and I could practice having it again. I practiced trust. I practiced until my hands cramped. One night, months before the morning on the porch when I overheard him, I found a message on his laptop. It was short, polite, and full of plans. The name at the top was Lena. She wrote like someone who had learned how to be careful with words. The message was about a weekend trip, about a photo he would send, about a time they would steal an hour between shifts. My chest burned when I read it, but I closed the laptop and sat still until Noah fell asleep on my chest. I kissed his hair and told myself that people lie sometimes, and that my husband could be forgiven. But people who lie often lie again. I began to notice patterns. Mark started leaving earlier. He started working overtime and picking up shifts across town. He began to take phone calls in the garage as if he were using a private office. He became private in a way that did not fit the man who once left sticky notes on the bathroom mirror saying, "I love you." I am not proud of the nights I stayed up waiting for him to return. I am not proud of the way I learned to watch for his headlights like a hungry animal watches for prey. But I will tell you this, I still tried to be kind. I wanted to give him a chance to tell me the truth. I wanted to believe in the vows we said. The morning I overheard him, Noah had taken his science kits to school and hummed a song he made up. I was in the kitchen making waffles, thinking about the week ahead. Mark was in the garage rearranging his tools like he always did on Saturday. His phone started to ring. He walked to the garage window and answered as if the call would not reach me. "Hey," his voice said like a coat he put on. He did not lower the tone at all. I thought about the ways the world taught women to listen for reasons, for proof, for signs. I stepped without making a sound. He spoke to someone with a softness that was not for me. He spoke plans in quick breaths. He spoke like the person on the other end was carrying a secret between them. "She'll never find out. She's too naive." Those words were not meant to be heard. They were meant to be a promise. The promise that one can hide something inside the folds of another's good nature and never be caught. I did not confront him that day. I did not scream or slam doors. I did something else that felt more like me. I packed a small box. Inside the box I put small things that meant the truth but did not shout it. I put a photograph of Mark and the other woman smiling at a table by the river from a time-stamped picture I found on a social media account. I put the little hairband I had found under the couch. I folded a hotel receipt with his name on it. I slipped in a note written in my own hand, I know. That note was not angry. It was simple. That was the point. It was a small, steady light in a room of shadows. The box looked foolish on his pillow. It was small and plain. He had a stack of work papers, a set of keys, a coffee mug with a chip on the rim. The box did not match the big secrets people keep in their hearts. But sometimes small things are enough to topple a house of cards. He opened it with fingers that trembled slightly. He looked at the photograph. He ran his thumb over the edge of the hairband like it belonged to someone else. He read the hotel receipt. He read my note. Then he sank to the floor. From my place on the steps, I watched him. I watched him fold in around himself like paper. He pressed the photograph to his chest like someone holding a confession. I had not expected that reaction. My chest loosened a tiny bit at the sight. But the world does not turn on tiny loosenings. I thought I had seen the worst of him in that moment. I thought the truth was the sharpest pain and that telling it would be the end of all things. I was wrong. After I left, I did what I always did when my heart felt heavy. I walked to the park and fed the pigeons. They pecked politely and did not ask for explanations. A woman with gray hair sat on the bench and told me about her grandson's piano recital. She said people were complicated and that sometimes we forgive because we want to be lighter. I told her I understood, but I also knew that understanding does not mean staying. When I returned home, the front door was unlocked. The living room smelled like old coffee. The couch had a coffee stain on the arm where Mark always sat. Noah's sneakers were by the door. There was a faint perfume on his jacket that was not mine. The house had an odd sharpness to it, like someone had opened a window and left it for too long. I went in Noah's room and found his science project on the desk, a paper volcano labeled in my son's childish handwriting. I kissed his forehead like I did every night and told him I loved him, even though I had not told him everything that made my chest heavy. A less extreme event happened then, quiet and simple. Mark called. He left a message that was short and blunt. "Emily, can we talk? Please come home." His voice had a tremor I had not heard before. It sounded like someone asking for help who did not want anyone to see them weak. I did not go back that night. I sat in my car and watched the house from across the street. I wanted to see him open the box. I wanted to know what he would do. I wanted to know if he would tell the truth. I wanted, in that small place inside me, for the man I married to be the man he once was. Hours passed. The porch light went out. The house slipped into its own quiet. I thought about the times I had apologized for things I did not do. I thought about my father's hands and the way he fixed things without fuss. I thought about the little boy who would grow up inside walls that smelled like betrayal. Then something extreme happened. A neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez from next door, came running down the sidewalk. I saw her flashlight sweep the yard. She shouted Mark's name like someone who had lost a child. Her voice made the night stretch long. I stood up so quickly I almost dropped my coffee. I ran to the house. The front door was open a sliver. I could see Mark on the floor through the doorway. He was on his side, not moving the way people move when they sleep. His hand was on the photo from the box. He was not breathing like someone who had just been scared. He looked pale under the porch light. Mrs. Alvarez was on the phone, voice shaking as she spoke to someone who would send help. Noah was asleep. He slept like a child who had never known the taste of broken promises. I crouched down beside Mark. His face was familiar and foreign at the same time. He had spilled something coffee, and it had stained the sleeve of his shirt. The small wooden box lay open on the pillow behind him like a calm sea after a storm. The things inside it were scattered: the hairband, the hotel receipt, the photograph, my folded note. I did not know whether to feel triumph or fear. Sirens grew closer in the distance. Light flashed through the window and painted the walls with red and blue. Mrs. Alvarez kept talking to someone on the phone, telling them where we were. Her voice was loud and raw. People came out of their houses, slippers on, eyes wide. I held Mark's hand. It felt warm at first, and then cold in a way that made my stomach twist. I watched his chest rise and fall in a way that did not tell me anything yet. He had finally understood something. Whether it was the truth I had always known or the weight of the life we had built, I could not tell. The photograph in his other hand was damp where his thumb had touched it. His lips moved as if forming words I could not hear. Noah woke to the noise and drifted into the living room in his pajamas. He rubbed his eyes and looked from me to the man on the floor. He did not understand. He asked quietly, "Is Daddy okay?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to wrap a blanket around him and tell him everything would be fine. Instead, I stood up and picked Noah into my arms. I could feel his heart against mine and his small hands clutching my shirt. The ambulance arrived and men in bright jackets moved quickly and quietly through our living room. For a long moment, everyone worked with purpose, and the house felt like a place where strangers could make things right. Then, like a curtain, everything closed again into waiting. I sat in the kitchen doorway and watched the men carry Mark to the stretcher. His eyes were open a little, like someone seeing the sky for the first time after a long time underground. He glanced at the box on the pillow and then at me. There was something in his face that looked like shame and something that looked like fear. I could not tell which one was stronger. They took him away with his hand still on the photograph. The blue tissue fluttered to the floor like a small flag. The house smelled like plastic bandages and coffee and the quiet that comes after thunder. I did not follow the ambulance. I drove Noah to my sister's house and left him with a promise I did not know how to keep. "I'll bring you breakfast in the morning." My sister hugged me and made tea. I washed my hands until the water went cold. I sat on my sister's couch and thought about the small wooden box. I thought about kindness and what it means to be kind to yourself. I had been kind for so long to people who did not return it. Kindness, I learned, is not a reason to stay small. Kindness is a reason to be brave. That night, I sat with my wallet and a small flashlight and the photograph tucked under my arm. I thought about the life we had built and whether it was better to tear it down or try to rebuild it. I thought about Noah and the way he laughed when he found a ladybug on his finger. I thought about how the world asks us to forgive, but sometimes forgiveness comes after truth. I thought about what the neighbor had said as she knelt by my porch. Sometimes people break because they carry too many hidden things. Mark had hidden something. He had told someone else that I would not find out because I was naive. He had counted on my good heart to make his secret safe. He had been wrong. The small box had been a light that cut through the dark, and now the house lay in the wake of that sudden light. Outside, the night was quiet. Inside, the house waited. The photograph on the pillow was a small rectangle holding a secret. The sirens had faded. The words, "She'll never find out," sat in my head like a stone. I had done one thing that morning. I had refused to lie to myself any longer. I had left the box on his pillow and I had gone away. And in doing so, I had started something that could not be undone. I will not tell you everything now. There will be time for that. For now, the ambulance lights had gone and the neighbor's words still echoed. The box lay open and the hairband was on the floor where it had fallen. Noah slept in my sister's spare room and dreamed of volcanoes that never erupted. We reached the extreme event the chapter asked us for. Mark was taken away by the ambulance, his body collapsing under the weight of what he had kept. The truth had finally landed. The small wooden box had done its quiet work. But there is more to come. Some answers are slow. Some hearts need time to heal or break. I am tired and I am steady. I will be kind and I will be careful. I will tell you the rest when you ask for it. For now, I will end this chapter here with the sound of the ambulance fading into the night and the image of the small wooden box on our bed, its lid open like a question. The ambulance lights had already faded down the street when I sat in my sister Mia's kitchen and watched the second hand on the clock move too fast. My fingers trembled a little as I wrapped my hands around a warm mug. The hospital smelled like clean air and paper. I felt small and very loud inside of it. They let me see Mark for a short minute before they took him away to tests. He lay on a narrow bed, eyes half open, hair matted to his forehead. He looked like someone who had been pulled out of a deep sleep and could not remember the bed beneath him. The doctor spoke to me in a quiet, careful voice. "He's stable for now," she said. "We need to run some scans." Mark's hand found mine, and for a second the old warmth came back. His fingers were weak. He mouthed words I could not hear. I touched his thumb and felt the photo I had put in the box brush against his sweater where he had folded it. He had wrapped his fingers around that small rectangle like it was the only real thing left. When they closed the curtain and the machines began to hum, I left the room and walked the long hall. People moved past with clipped shoes and soft voices. A man wheeled a child with a cast on his arm. An elderly woman slept under a blanket. The world inside the hospital was careful and slow. I wanted to be careful and slow too, but my mind raced like a bird in a small cage. I told the nurse where my son was and arranged for Noah to spend the night with Mia. Noah sat on Mia's couch with his pajama pants too long and a book about volcanoes open on his lap. He did not ask many questions. He asked small ones like, "Is Daddy going to be okay?" His voice was thin. I said what I could that would not make him worry more. "Doctors are helping Daddy, baby. He's in good hands. We'll go see him in the morning." Noah nodded and yawned like children do when their bodies decide to sleep no matter how worried their heads are. After I left Noah with Mia, I went back to the hospital. The waiting room smelled like coffee and worry. I sat on a vinyl chair and watched the automatic doors open and close with the world beyond. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from a neighbor. "Is everything okay? I saw the ambulance. Call me if you need anything." Another message from the school. "Is Noah okay? We can keep him after school if needed." The small kindnesses stacked up like stones. I held them like shields. At some point a detective arrived. He wore a plain jacket and an expression people put on when they had to say hard things. He asked me some questions. He was not gruff. He was not kind either. He took down my answers on a small pad. "Where were you this morning?" he asked. "Did your husband have any medical issues we should know about?" His pen scratched across the page. I told him everything I could in short sentences. I told him about the phone call, the words I heard in the garage, the little wooden box on the pillow. I told him about the photograph and the receipt. The detective's eyes did not change. He did not judge me. He only wrote. "There's no sign of violence," he said finally. "But we will keep a record. If you remember anything else, call us." He left a card and a look that said this might be bigger than a simple family fight. I folded the card into my wallet like I folded so many things inside myself. That night at the hospital felt like standing inside a glass room where everything outside was dim and foreign. Mark slept with a soft beeping beside him. I watched his chest rise and fall. Sometimes he coughed and the nurse checked the monitors and made small adjustments. Once, he reached for the photo on the bedside table and held it like a talisman. His fingers trembled and his lips moved as if saying sorry to a shape I could not see. "How did you find out?" he said once, barely audible. His voice was thin, like a thread. I held his hand and said nothing for a long moment. If I spoke, I knew the words would be heavy with everything I had seen and kept. When the doctor came in the morning, she told me more. "We need to wait for the results," she said. "But there's no sign of a stroke or heart attack. He likely fainted from stress, dehydration, or low blood sugar. We'll run blood tests and keep him overnight." Her words sounded practical in a room that had been made small by feelings. I wanted to ask him questions: why, who, how long, but the words stuck to the back of my throat. I wanted to scream at him and tell him how all the little things had added up. Instead, I did something quieter. I walked to the hospital chapel and sat on a wooden bench. I folded my hands and breathed in and out. I am not religious in a loud way, but I believe in asking for strength when the night is too long. Mia called while I sat in that quiet room. Her voice was steady. "You should come stay with Noah for a bit," she said. "Let me handle things here." I agreed because I could not think of a better plan. My mind kept circling back to the tiny things that had told me the truth, threads of proof that were small but steady. Back at the house that afternoon, the living room looked like a place time had passed through. Noah's toy truck was on the floor. The sink had a dish with a dried bit of spaghetti. The blue tissue from the box still lay crumpled on the bed where the box had been opened. I started to look through Mark's things with careful hands. I wanted facts, plain objects that did not speak in riddles. I found more receipts. He had bought flowers at odd times and paid for breakfasts in neighborhoods I did not recognize. There were hotel key cards in the glove compartment of his car and a small passport-sized calendar with dates circled in pencil. In his wallet, behind a folded business card, was a business receipt with the name of a cafe and a phone number written in a hand that was not his. The house settled around me. I felt both angry and oddly empty. I thought of all the times I had laughed at jokes he told, the lazy afternoons on the couch, the way he taught Noah to whistle. Those memories were real. They were not lies. But they sat beside other memories that now felt like holes in a rug. Less extreme days followed then. The routine of calls to insurance, the careful arranging of Noah's school pickup, text messages to friends that said, "I'm okay. We're getting through this." People brought casseroles. They sat for an hour and gave me a quiet presence that kept me from collapsing into myself. Mrs. Alvarez brought over a pie and a hug that smelled like lavender. Her eyes were kind and sharp. "You did the right thing," she said once, not like a judge, but like someone who had seen hard things and chosen to speak. I spent long afternoons washing shirts and folding laundry. Laundry felt like an honest thing. Each shirt smelled like the person who wore it. Mark's shirts smelled faintly of his cologne and a different perfume that was not mine. I folded them carefully and put them in a pile. Some items I could not fold without my hands shaking. I put those aside. One late afternoon while I was sorting through his coat pockets, the doorbell rang. I froze. I had not expected visitors. Mia was at work. Noah was with a friend. I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked to the door slowly, careful not to look like I knew what would be waiting. When I opened the door, a woman stood on the porch. She was younger than I expected, maybe in her early 30s. Her face was tired and bare, and she held a small carrier close to her chest like it was the only thing she could hold steady. In the carrier was a tiny blanket peeking out. The woman's eyes were red from crying. There was a suitcase beside her. For a moment, I could not place her. Then I remembered the name Lena from the messages I had seen and the receipts I had found. My heart bumped hard against my ribs. "Hi," she said softly. Her voice trembled. She looked like someone who had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times and still could not make it lighter. I need to see Mark." My throat closed. I wanted to slam the door. I wanted to invite her in and ask her to explain everything. I wanted to do both at the same time. The neighbor's dog started barking down the street, and the sound seemed too loud. "Where is he?" she asked, and her eyes darted past me toward the street like she expected an ambulance to burst through the trees. "He's at the hospital," I said. "He's being seen. He fainted." My voice came out flat and small. The words felt like stepping stones across a river I did not want to cross. Lena took a step forward, baby carrier clutched tight. "Please," she said. "I need to know if he's okay." He promised he would leave. He promised he would. She could not finish. The sentence broke into a sob. A dozen things tried to speak at once inside me. Rage. Sadness. A strange empathy for this woman who had apparently loved the same man. She had a tiny face that looked like she had been up all night. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot. A small ribbon hung from the carrier. The baby had a tuft of hair that stuck up like a small question mark. I stepped back and let her in. It felt dangerous and necessary at the same time. The house would know the truth if we both sat in the same room. The truth is often heavy and loud when it meets itself. We sat in the living room. Lena's hands shook as she lifted the blanket and showed me a small sock. I felt tears in my eyes, though I had not cried yet that day. We were both quiet for a long time, but there was more between us than silence. There was a map of choices and promises that had been kept by some and broken by others. I found out 2 months ago, Lena said finally. I thought he would leave his wife. He said he loved me. He said he wanted a new life. I left my job. I moved here. Her words came out like scattered beads. I trusted him. He said he would tell her. He said she would not find out. The air in the room felt thinner with each of her sentences. My hands curled into my lap. My anger burned, but it had a new shape in it now, a shape that included this small person in a carrier who had done nothing but be born. Before I could speak, Lena reached into her suitcase and pulled out something that made my stomach flip. It was a small envelope with Mark's name on it. She handed it to me with shaking fingers. He gave this to me last week, she whispered. He said if anything happened, this would explain. Her eyes begged me to take it gently, like I might crush the secret inside. I opened the envelope with careful fingers. Inside was a small stack of receipts, a photograph, one I had seen before, the same one from the wooden box, and a note written in a hand that was not mine or Lena's. It said, I will make it right. Trust me. My hands read the paper and my heart answered with a strange and heavy sound. I looked up at Lena. She looked at me. The small baby made a tiny noise in the carrier and then settled back down. The suitcase seemed to breathe with us. We sat with the envelope between us. Outside, the sky turned to a slow blue evening. The porch light came on and painted a circle of yellow on the welcome mat. Within that small pool of light, a new world had appeared at our door, a woman with a baby and a suitcase, and a belief that the man she loved would choose her. I felt 1,000 questions press against my ribs. I felt like someone standing at the edge of a high cliff, looking down. I thought of Noah sleeping at Mia's house, of the little hands he used to hold mine, of the way he would ask me why people make promises and then do not keep them. Why did you come here? I asked Lena at last. My voice was steady but quiet. I needed to know whether she was a threat or a mirror. Because I don't know what else to do, she said. I can't keep waiting. If he is not going to choose me, I need to know. Her words were honest in a way that made me ache for both of us. We sat together in a house filled with the smell of soap and old coffee, 2 women who had been handed pieces of the same puzzle. The envelope sat between us like a small flame. I thought of the detective's card in my wallet and the doctor's calm face. I thought of the little wooden box on Mark's pillow and the way he had taken to holding the photograph like a lifeline. Then, just as Lena began to tell me where she had been and when she had seen him last, there was a sharp sound outside. The front gate slammed as if pushed by a force. A car door slammed. A voice shouted a name I did not know. We both went to the window together. Down the street, a man ran up the sidewalk with breath like a bell. He stopped at our porch and looked up at our house like someone looking for a rooftop. His face was hard and young. He held his phone in his hand and a small video played on the screen showing Mark laughing with another woman at a cafe. He looked at Lena and then at me like he had just delivered a verdict. I thought you should see this, he said, voice sharp. This is what he's been doing. Everything turned very loud. The little house seemed to tilt. The baby whined. Noah's truck sat abandoned on the floor like a sign of the life that still spun slowly behind us. The man with the phone did not wait for an invitation. He did not know the rules of our small living room. He knocked his words into the space like a hammer. Lena grabbed the carrier and stood up like someone protecting a castle. Her knees were steady now, though her face still trembled. I looked at the video on his phone. There was Mark sitting close to a woman I did not know. They were smiling and touching hands. The man pushed the phone closer. His eyes asked me to choose a side. My chest felt like it would crack open. I had wanted things to be simpler, to be a quiet sorting of facts and decisions. Instead, the world had come to our porch with a video and a stranger's loud voice. The doorbell began to ring again. Neighbors gathered at their windows. The street was no longer a quiet place. The small envelope lay open on my lap like a new wound. I stood up. Lena and I looked at each other. Neither of us knew what would happen next. The house waited. The video glowed in the man's hand like a small, bright accusation. This was the new extreme event that closed the day. A stranger with a phone and a video at our door, a woman with a baby at my table, and the world watching. The truth we had uncovered in small, careful pieces now roared at us from outside, demanding an answer we did not yet have. I closed my fist around the photograph that had once meant a promise. The paper felt thin and fragile. The light from the street painted the living room in hard lines. We were surrounded by people and secrets, and the story was only just beginning. The man on the porch held his phone out like it was a weapon, like the video on that tiny screen was a final blow meant to shatter whatever pieces of truth Lena and I were still holding. The porch light flickered above him. The street behind him glowed with long shadows. Neighbors peered through blinds like we were a TV show they hadn't meant to watch, but suddenly couldn't turn away from. My heart pounded so loudly it felt like the walls could hear it. "Look at it," the man said again, pushing the phone toward me. "Look what he's been doing. Look who he's been seeing." Lena stiffened beside me. Her hand went to the baby carrier like she expected someone to snatch it from her. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "That's not me." I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. I didn't want to see the video. I didn't want to see more proof. I didn't want another image burned into me, a new lie, a new smile, a new stranger sitting where I once sat. But the man lifted the phone again, high, bright, unblinking. I looked. And there was Mark. In a cafe I didn't recognize. Laughing. Leaning close to a woman with short dark hair and a bright red coat. Her hand brushed his arm. He smiled the smile he used to save for me on our good days. He looked relaxed. At home. My throat closed. Lena's breath caught sharply. "Who is she?" she whispered. The man on the porch answered before I could. "She's my sister." Everything froze. "She told me about him months ago," he said, jaw tight. Said he promised her things. Said he told her he was getting divorced. Said he'd take care of everything. But then he started disappearing on her too. She cried every night for 2 weeks. His sister. Another woman. Another lie. The room spun for a second, and I had to grip the back of a chair to stay upright. My head felt too full. My heart felt too empty. The house felt too small for all the truths crashing in at once. Lena's voice was paper thin. "So he had 2 of us?" The man nodded once. "He used my sister. He used you. And from the looks of it," he glanced at the baby, "he used more than just your time." Lena pressed her hand against her mouth. Tears slipped out silently. The baby began to fuss, sensing her shaking. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know about her. I didn't know he was married, not this deep. I swear. He told me he was leaving. He told me." The man shook his head. "He told my sister the same thing." The porch felt crowded with ghosts, lies, promises, whispered secrets, half-truths stitched together into something poisonous. I took a slow breath. A soft one. Quiet. Because if I didn't, I might fall apart. "Why did you come here?" I asked the man, my voice steadier than I felt. His jaw flexed. "Because my sister deserves to know who hurt her. And so do you." He looked at me then, really looked. His eyes softened, only a little. "You seem like a decent person. You don't deserve this. Neither does she." He nodded at Lena. The air between all 3 of us felt heavy and sharp, like walking barefoot on broken glass. For a moment, no one spoke. The porch light hummed. A car drove by. The baby hiccuped. Then, like a slow tide, a new thought crept into my mind, a dangerous one. A sharp one. Mark didn't just betray me. He didn't just betray Lena. He didn't just betray the sister of this man. He had built a whole world of lies. A whole web. A whole network of people who thought they were special to him. Who thought they were chosen. We were all standing here now on the same porch because one man played all of us. Lena broke the silence first. I need to see him, she said quietly. I need to hear it from him. The man shook his head. You won't get the truth. People like him, they never confess. I didn't correct him. I didn't argue. Because in my bones, I knew he was right. But I also knew something else. Sometimes, a person doesn't need to confess out loud for their truth to come out. Sometimes, the truth spills itself. Sometimes, life forces it out. I started to close the door, quietly, calmly. Thank you for coming, I told the man on the porch. Your sister deserves better. I hope she finds peace. He hesitated, then nodded once. Take care of yourself, he said. And your child. Don't let him back in easy. He turned and walked down the steps into the dim evening, his shadow stretching long behind him. I shut the door gently. Inside, Lena sank onto the couch, shoulders trembling. The envelope Mark gave her lay open on the coffee table. The paper inside felt heavier than any object I had ever held. It wasn't just paper. It was the weight of a future he had promised someone else. We sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Lena looked at me. Emily, what do we do now? Her voice cracked. The baby whimpered. I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But something in my chest hardened, not in anger, but in clarity. We go to the hospital, I said finally. We hear everything. We let him see everything he caused. And then we decide. Lena nodded slowly. The baby shifted lightly against her chest, innocent in all of this. Before we left, I walked back into my bedroom. The small wooden box was still on the bed. Its lid open. Its story not finished. I closed it softly and placed it on the dresser. That chapter was not over. Not yet. We drove to the hospital in silence, headlights carving through the dark. When we stepped into the hospital room, Mark opened his eyes. He froze. Stared at me. Then at Lena. Then at the baby. And all the color drained out of his face. His mouth parted like he had forgotten how to speak. He tried to sit up but winced, his hand gripping the rail. Emily. I can explain. No, I said softly. Not yet. His gaze darted between us like he was drowning. And then, something happened. Something sharp. Something sudden. Something extreme. The machine beside his bed began to beep once, twice, then faster. His breath hitched. His hand clutched his chest. The nurse rushed in. The room spun into chaos. Lena gasped, stepping backward, clutching the carrier tight. And, just like that, Mark's body slumped sideways. The monitor alarm went off. Doctors shouted. Nurses ran in from the hallway. And I stood frozen at the foot of the bed as the man who told someone she'll never find out, she's too naive, began fighting for breath while every lie he ever told hung heavy in the air around him. The new extreme event had arrived. And everything was about to change. The room exploded into noise. The heart monitor screamed in sharp, fast beeps. Nurses swarmed like a sudden storm, moving with practiced speed, lifting wires, checking tubes, speaking in clipped, urgent commands. Blood pressure dropping. Get the crash cart now. Sir, can you hear me? Mark, stay with me. But Mark didn't answer. His eyes rolled back for a moment, white and unfocused. His chest rose sharply, then dipped like the breath couldn't decide whether to stay inside him or leave altogether. Lena pressed herself against the wall, clutching the baby carrier to her chest. Her eyes were wide, terrified, her breath shallow. She whispered, "Oh God, over and over, rocking slightly like she was trying to keep herself from falling apart. I stood at the foot of the bed, frozen. I didn't reach out. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply stood there, watching the man who broke my heart, the man who broke multiple hearts, fight for air while lies and secrets clung to the room like thick fog. A doctor pushed past me. Ma'am, please step back. I didn't move. Not at first. My feet felt rooted to the floor, as if the world had decided I was part of the hospital tile now. But then the baby began to cry soft, confused sounds rising from the carrier, and something inside me snapped back into place. I stepped backward, making room for the nurses, my hands trembling at my sides. The machine beeped louder. Then slower. Then louder again. Chaos. Silence. Chaos again. "Where is the attending?" one nurse snapped. "He's on the way, keep monitoring." The hallway filled as more staff rushed in. Doors opened. A cart rolled past. A woman in scrubs took Lena by the shoulders and guided her out, saying, "Miss, please wait outside. We'll update you." Lena obeyed. Her lips trembled. She held onto the baby like he was the only thing still real in her world. But I stayed. Something in me said I needed to be here, not for him, but for the truth. The truth of who he was. The truth of what he had chosen. The truth of what came after a lifetime of lies. The doctor finally arrived, a tall man with silver hair and calm hands. He reached the bed and barked a few orders, and suddenly the room shifted from panic to controlled motion. "Push 2 milligrams. Check his airway. He's going into arrhythmia, prepare the pads." My heart climbed into my throat. Arrhythmia. The word stuck to me like glue. He wasn't just fainting this time. This was real. This was big. This was the moment where a man's choices caught up to him, and he had nowhere left to run. Mark's face turned paler by the second. Sweat rolled down his forehead. His hand twitched once, then fell limp on the sheet. His chest jerked unnaturally, sharp, shallow, uneven. The doctor grabbed the defibrillator paddles and pressed them to Mark's chest. Clear. His body jolted off the bed. Lena, who had reappeared at the door despite being told to wait outside, choked on a cry. She covered the baby's ears with her hands. My breath froze inside me. Again, the doctor ordered. Clear. Another jolt. The machine beeped erratically. The doctor leaned over him, listening, watching, waiting. And then, finally, a slow, steady pattern returned. Beep, beep, beep. The whole room exhaled at once. The doctor relaxed his shoulders. "We've got him." Nurses began adjusting 4 lines. Someone switched out a bag of fluids. Someone else cleaned the residue from the defibrillator pads. The room felt suddenly too small, too hot, too full of air and not enough space to breathe. I stepped back again, pressing my hands over my mouth. Mark was alive. But he looked nothing like the man who once stood in our kitchen eating toast and kissing Noah on the head. He looked smaller, weaker, like someone who had finally reached a wall he couldn't talk his way around. His eyes fluttered open. Barely. They drifted toward me. Then toward Lena. Then toward the baby. And he looked terrified. The doctor spoke first. "You're stable now, Mark. But you had a dangerous episode. You need to rest. No stress. No heavy conversations." Mark didn't answer. He just stared at us, silently, like words were drowning inside him. When the staff finally stepped out to give him space, Lena sank into the chair beside the window. She held the baby tightly, tears slipping down her cheek. The baby, confused by the tension, squirmed and fussed. I stood by the foot of the bed, arms folded, my chest rising and falling too fast. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Finally, Mark's voice broke the silence. It was a whisper. A weak, soft whisper. "Emily, I didn't want you to find out like this." I stared at him. My pulse thumped hard in my ears. "You didn't want me to find out at all," I said quietly. "Not like this. Not ever." He closed his eyes briefly, then reopened them, slow and heavy. "I'm sorry." Lena let out a sharp, bitter laugh, choked and wet with tears. "Sorry," she echoed. "You told me you loved me. You told me you were leaving her. You promised things." The baby whimpered again. Mark looked away. The lights above him buzzed faintly. The hospital machine clicked as it printed out a strip of paper marking his heart rhythm. And then, a nurse hurried into the room. "Ma'am," she said, addressing me. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but someone is here asking to see you. She says it's urgent." I frowned. "Who?" The nurse hesitated, eyes uncertain. She didn't give her name. But she said she's connected to all of this. My stomach sank. I had no idea what that meant. Connected how? Another woman? Another secret? Another piece of the puzzle I didn't know existed? "Where is she?" I asked quietly. In the waiting area, the nurse said. She refuses to leave until she speaks with you. Lena shot to her feet, heart pounding visibly in her chest. Is it his sister? She asked. No, the nurse answered. Is it the detective? I tried. The nurse shook her head again. She looked nervous, the nurse said. And she said she's been trying to reach you for weeks. Weeks? My chest tightened. Weeks ago. That was before everything fell apart. Emily, Lena whispered. Who could it be? I didn't have the answer. But I felt the walls of the world tighten around me as I stepped toward the door. Because whoever was waiting outside was about to blow everything open. Again. I walked out of the room slowly, each step heavier than the last, knowing the next extreme event was already forming. Before I even saw her face, the hallway outside Mark's room felt colder than it had any right to be. The nurse's last words echoed in my mind. She said she's been trying to reach you for weeks. Weeks. Before the phone call. Before the box. Before the ambulance. Before the truth cracked open like a fault line. I walked slowly, my palms damp, my mind racing through possibilities I wasn't ready to face. Another affair? Another woman? Another lie? Or was it something worse? Something that would drag this whole situation into a place I hadn't even imagined? My footsteps sounded too loud on the linoleum floor. Every nurse who passed gave me a small, tired smile, the kind people give when they see someone carrying a weight they cannot lighten. I reached the end of the hallway and turned into the waiting area. A woman sat alone in the corner. She wasn't young like Lena. She wasn't polished like the woman in the video. She wasn't crying or shaking. She simply waited. Her hands were clasped in her lap, a small brown folder resting on her knees. Her clothes were plain jeans, a faded hoodie, sneakers. Her hair was pulled back into a loose bun. She looked like someone who'd walked through 1,000 bad days and learned how to sit quietly inside them. When she looked up at me, her eyes were soft, sad, and familiar in a way I couldn't explain. Emily Carter, she asked. I nodded. She stood slowly, holding the folder against her chest. Thank you for coming. I know you're dealing with a lot right now. Her voice was gentle, too gentle, and something inside me tightened. Who are you? I asked. She took a breath. My name is Rachel. The name didn't ring any bells. But the way she looked at me, like she had carried my name in her mouth for weeks, made my stomach twist. I motioned to a chair, and we sat down together. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she placed the brown folder on the table between us. I'm not here to make things harder, she said quietly. I couldn't stay away anymore. My throat tightened. Are you? I hesitated. Are you connected to my husband? She flinched barely, but it was enough. I knew him, she whispered. But not the way you think. Silence settled over us thickly. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the folder and pushed a small stack of papers toward me. At first, all I saw were forms, legal documents, typed names, signatures. Then I saw his name. Mark Carter. My heart stumbled. What is this? I whispered. Rachel took a slow breath, like the truth was something sharp inside her lungs. I work at the county social services office, she said softly. I handle child support and paternity cases. My heartbeat picked up. Child support. Paternity. My fingers froze on the edge of the papers. Rachel continued, her voice delicate and careful, as if she worried one wrong word would shatter me entirely. I've been trying to reach Mark for months, she said. Calling. Emailing. Sending notices. He never replied. When he finally did last month, she hesitated. The conversation didn't go well. She swallowed hard. He insisted he wasn't responsible. He refused to do a test. He threatened to get a lawyer. She looked down at her hands. But I knew he was lying. I knew because I remember the day he first came into our office. He was charming. Too charming. He flirted with my coworker. He made it sound like he was a man going through a hard marriage, trying to find his way. The floor beneath me seemed to shift. So he fathered another child? I whispered, voice thin. Rachel looked into my eyes, and the sadness in hers felt like a tidal wave. No, she said gently. Not fathered. A small pause. He is suspected of fathering a child, but he refused to test. I stared at her. She continued. I didn't come here to talk about that child, Emily. Not really. She took a shaky breath. I came because I found something else, something that didn't sit right with me. Something that involved you. My chest tightened painfully. Years ago, she said, voice trembling just slightly, someone filed a welfare check request for you. Anonymous. Repeatedly. Someone expressed concern about how your husband was treating you. My blood froze. What? I whispered. She nodded. At first it was vague. Then clearer. Someone said you were being isolated. Someone said they feared emotional manipulation. Someone sent documentation, receipts, notes, things they believed you weren't aware of. I felt the room tilt. What documentation? My voice barely made it out. Rachel opened the folder again and removed a small envelope, old, wrinkled, edges worn. She handed it to me. My name was written on the front. In Mark's handwriting. The world stopped. Every sound in the waiting area blurred into nothing. Hands shaking, I opened the envelope. Inside were several folded papers, handwritten letters. Never sent. The first one began. Emily, I know I've hurt you more than you say aloud. I see it. I don't know how to fix it. I wish I could. Another. I don't know why I say things I don't mean. I don't know why I lie to you when all you give me is kindness. Another. Sometimes I feel like you deserve a better man. I'm trying. I swear I'm trying. And one more. There is someone from my past who won't leave things alone. I'm sorry. If anything happens, I hope you know I loved you in my own broken way. I stared at the last line until the words blurred. My nails pressed into the paper. My breath shook. What does this mean? I whispered. Rachel's eyes softened. It means he's been hiding more than affairs. More than lies. More than secrets. Someone was threatening him. Someone who wanted something from him. Someone who made him desperate. My pulse hammered. Who? I whispered. Rachel lifted another document from the folder, one stamped, official, heavy enough to change the course of a life. But before she could hand it to me, a sharp voice cut through the hall. Emily. I turned. A doctor was jogging toward me. My stomach dropped. Not again. Not now. What happened? I asked, standing so fast the chair screeched. The doctor's face was serious, too serious. It's your husband, he said breathlessly. We stabilized him earlier, but something's changed. My heart slammed against my ribs. He's awake, the doctor said. A pause. But he's asking for you. Only you. Rachel's eyes widened. Lena stood in the doorway of his room, trembling. The baby whimpered. I swallowed hard. What does he want? I whispered. The doctor hesitated. He says he knows something, he said. Something we need to hear. Something urgent. My pulse raced faster. He told the nurse, the doctor continued slowly, that someone is after him. I froze. What? I breathed. The doctor nodded grimly. He said he wasn't afraid of the truth coming out. He was afraid of the person who wanted to bury him before it did. The lights above flickered. The hallway fell silent. And in that moment, I knew Chapter 5 wasn't ending with an explanation. It was ending with a warning. Because the biggest secret, the biggest betrayal, the biggest danger, was still waiting behind that hospital door. The doctor's words hung in the hallway like smoke, thick, heavy, impossible to ignore. Someone is after him. My hands went cold. Behind me, Rachel froze with the brown folder still in her lap. Lena tightened her grip on the baby carrier, eyes wide. Even the nurses who overheard exchanged quick, uneasy glances. This wasn't just a marriage falling apart. This wasn't just infidelity. This wasn't just a man juggling lies. Something bigger, darker, had been hiding underneath the surface. And now it wanted to be heard. The doctor motioned for me. Come quick, before he loses consciousness again. I nodded slowly and stepped toward Mark's room, my heartbeat a steady drum against my ribs. My palms were slick with sweat. My breath was thin. But I walked in anyway. Because I needed the truth. Because I deserved it. Because this story needed an ending and I wasn't walking away from it. When I entered the room, the lights were dimmed. Machines beeped steadily. The air smelled like antiseptic and something faintly metallic. Mark lay half upright, pale, exhausted, but alive. And scared. When his eyes met mine, a tremor passed through him, not from pain, but from fear. Not of me. Of something else. Emily, his voice cracked. Close the door. I didn't move. What's going on? I asked. He swallowed hard and stared at the doorway until I slowly pushed the door shut behind me. His breath rattled. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, like all his charm and confidence had drained out, leaving only the truth behind. Please, he whispered. Just listen. I don't have much time. I stepped closer but stayed out of reach. Lies were infectious. I wasn't getting too close. His fingers tightened around the bedsheet. I know what you found. The receipts. The photos. The messages. The women. His voice broke. I'm not going to pretend anymore. I messed up. I lied. I hurt you. I hurt them. A tear slid down his cheek. But that's not the worst thing I've done. A chill crawled up my spine. What's worse than betraying your family? I whispered. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them with effort. Years ago, before you and I ever met, I got involved with someone. Someone I shouldn't have. Someone dangerous. My pulse quickened. She wanted money, he whispered. I didn't have it. She threatened me. Said she'd ruin my life. Said she'd ruin whoever I ended up with. She kept tabs on me for years. The words sank in slowly. You think she's the one who filed those welfare checks? I asked. He nodded weakly. And you think she's after you now? His breath hitched. I know she is. I stared at him, this man who had broken our trust in 1,000 small ways, now trembling like a child. I tried to tell you in the letters, he said. I tried to tell you before we got married. But she told me if I spoke, she'd come after you. So I stayed quiet. I thought I could outrun her. I thought she'd forget. His face twisted in pain. She didn't forget. My heart wasn't soft for him, but it wasn't made of stone either. Why no? I asked quietly. What changed? He stared at the ceiling. She found out about the affairs. The room blurred for a moment. Affairs. Plural. The truth pressed down like weight on my chest. She sent a message, he said. Said she'd make sure everything I cared about was destroyed. He coughed violently. The machine beeped in protest. She told me she knew where Noah went to school. My stomach dropped. Cold. Heavy. Immediate. Did you tell the police? I demanded. Who would believe me, he whispered. I look like a liar. A cheater. A coward. His throat tightened. And I am those things. But she's worse. She's dangerous. My breath shook. Who is she? He pressed his lips together, trembling. Her name is. The door burst open. Not violently. Not loudly. Just fast enough to suck the air out of the room. A nurse stumbled in, cheeks red, breath uneven. Ma'am, sorry, there's a situation outside. Security asked me to get you. Before I could speak, she looked at Mark. Then at me. Then back at Mark. She's here. The words hit me harder than anything else that night. She, I whispered. The woman he's talking about? The nurse swallowed. She didn't answer directly, but her silence said enough. They had stopped her at the front desk. She had tried to get past security. She had asked for Mark by name. Fear rippled down my spine. Mark's heart monitor began to beep faster. Emily, please. Take Noah. Take him somewhere safe. My voice was barely a breath. You're not dying. You're just scared. No, he gasped. You don't understand. You don't understand who she is. His fingers clutched my wrist, weak, shaking, desperate. I'm sorry I betrayed you. I'm sorry I hurt you. But this is different. This is bigger. The nurse took a step back, glancing toward the hallway like she expected someone to walk in at any moment. We need to move you, she told me. Now. I backed up slightly, my heart pounding so loud it echoed in my ears. Where is she? Security is talking to her, the nurse said. But she's demanding to come up. She said she has unfinished business. A cold shiver shot through me. Suddenly, everything felt sharp. The lights. The air. The silence. The fear. Mark gripped my wrist tighter. Please, please tell Noah I love him. My breath broke. Stop talking like that. He opened his eyes wider, tears slipping out. Emily, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for everything. I thought I could handle her. I thought I could keep you safe. The door opened again. This time, it wasn't the nurse. It was security. 2 officers. Serious faces. Urgent voices. Ma'am, one said. We need to get you and the other women out of this area. Now. My heart slammed. The other women. I repeated. Your sister, the officer said. The one with the baby. And the woman with the folder. Rachel. Lena. The baby. They were in danger too. I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. Mark whispered one last thing, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. I think she followed you here. The machines beeped faster. The nurse backed away. The officers motioned toward the hall. And I stepped into a world where betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was dangerous. And the woman who started all of this? She was inside the hospital, looking for us. And this time, she wasn't here to talk. She was here to finish what she started. The officers led us fast, their steps sharp and controlled. The hallway lights flickered as if the hospital itself understood the tension in the air. Where is she? I asked, my voice barely steady. 1 floor down, the taller officer answered. She's refusing to leave. She's demanding access to your husband's room. She says she has a right to him. Lena gasped. Right to him? She sounds. But her words were drowned by a sudden noise from the elevator at the end of the hall. A scream. Not loud. Not long. But sharp enough to freeze every muscle in my body. The officers exchanged a look. Stay here, one commanded. But I didn't listen. None of us did. Lena held the baby close, her whole body shaking. Rachel pressed the brown folder against her chest. I felt my pulse in my throat. We stepped forward slowly, carefully. Down the hall. Toward the elevator. Toward the sound. When the elevator door slid open, a woman stood there. Not wild. Not messy. Not screaming. Calm. Too calm. She stepped out as if she were walking into a quiet cafe instead of a hospital buzzing with security. She was tall, elegant, with jet black hair pinned neatly behind her head. Her lipstick was a deep wine red. Her clothes were dark, fitted, pressed clean. She looked like someone who lived her life with precision. But her eyes were cold, empty, focused. Not on the officers. Not on the nurses. Not on the chaos she had caused. She was staring directly at me. Emily, she said softly, like greeting an old friend. My breath caught. Lena stepped back instantly. Rachel froze. The officers positioned themselves in front of us. Ma'am, you can't be up here, one officer said. You were told to leave. She ignored him. Her gaze never left mine. You're stronger in person, she said with a small tilt of her head. He always said that. But seeing you now, I finally understand why he could never walk away. The hallway fell silent. Her words felt like a blade pressed against my ribcage. The baby whimpered softly. Lena shushed him, hands trembling. Rachel shifted her weight, ready to run or fight, I couldn't tell. The woman took 2 slow steps closer, stopping just at the edge of the officer's reach. Where is he? She asked. Her voice was calm. Flat. Almost bored. The kind of calm that comes before violence. The officer blocked her path. Ma'am, turn around or we will escort. She snapped her gaze to him. Just her gaze. The officer faltered. Her eyes were piercing. Controlled. Calculated. Not angry. Not emotional. Dangerous. Then she looked back at me. You know what he did to me, she said softly. You know why I can't leave without facing him. I shook my head. I don't know you. A small smile touched her lips. You do now. One of the officers reached for her arm. She didn't fight back. She let him. But her eyes stayed on me, locked and unblinking, even as he turned her toward the elevator. And as the doors began to close behind them, she lifted one finger and pointed it directly at my chest. Not in threat. Not in anger. In certainty. You'll come looking for me, she said. Not shouted. Not whispered. Just spoken. certain, calm, like a promise. The door shut, and the hall fell silent. A nurse exhaled shakily. A doctor hurried past, whispering updates to another. Someone down the hall dropped a clipboard. But I stood frozen. Because her eyes, her voice, her certainty, told me one thing. This wasn't over. Not even close. Back in Mark's room, he looked weaker than before, like the encounter in the hallway had reached him without him even seeing it. His voice cracked when he asked, "Was she here?" I nodded. A tear slid down the side of his face. "I told you," he whispered. "I told you she'd come." For the first time since all of this began, I believed him. Not because he earned my trust. Not because he deserved faith. Not because he was innocent. But because the fear in his eyes was real. And fear that deep doesn't come from guilt. It comes from knowing what a person is capable of. I took a slow breath and stepped back from his bedside. "Mark," I whispered. "What did you do to her?" His lips trembled. He closed his eyes. And when he opened them again, they were empty. Hollow. Broken. "Everything," he whispered.